I spy with my little eye a super spy who fights AI. This is Vader Reviews. We are honored that you would join us for my review of Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, the seventh film in the wildly popular Mission Impossible franchise, which saw its first outing all the way back in 1996. Tom Cruise continues his long-running career as super spy Ethan Hunt, and as impossible as it may be to believe, at 61 years of age, he is now older than Jon Voight when he played Mr. Phelps in the original Mission Impossible. So, what did I think of MI7? Let's talk about it. The enemies of freedom are Tom Cruisin' for a bruisin' in this latest offering, Dead Reckoning, Part 1. And despite a few problems here and there, I had a really good time with this movie in the theater. Its strengths outweigh its weaknesses, but I will say, you really feel that this is part one of a story, because you're left with some mysteries and unexplained character motivations. And how well these story threads are resolved in part 2 will determine how often I come back and revisit this film in the future. That being said, if you want standard Mission Impossible action and spy shenanigans, this film delivers for the most part, but I'll touch on that more in a minute. First, some positives. You like scenery? Well, this movie's got plenty of it. And if you're like me and you can't afford to take a vacation, go on a little Tom Cruise instead, and see the world in this globe-trotting adventure. Because they visit some of the most beautiful destinations. Venice, Rome, they even take a ride on the Orient Express. It's beautifully shot, well acted, it has a great score. And if you're a fan of chase scenes, this is the movie for you. All of the old cast are back, and true to form, they haven't lost a step. And they also bring along some pleasant new faces. As always, Tom Cruise, the consummate professional and absolute madman that he is, over-delivers on some great stunt work. Although I will say, for me personally, nothing in this film quite topped hanging onto the outside of an airplane. And while this film had its fair share of action, none of the fights had the brutality or the visceral excitement of that bathroom brawl we saw with Henry Cavill. But overall, I was still thoroughly entertained. Now, I've heard some describe this as the best Mission Impossible yet. And while it is undeniably an entertaining film, I wouldn't go that far. You see, I had a few problems with this film. Mainly, the villains. A hero is only as good as his villains, after all. And this franchise has seen some truly great ones in the past. Philip Seymour Hoffman, for example, in Mission Impossible 3. But in this film, however, without going into heavy spoilers, the main threat is much more nebulous, because it's a malevolent AI. It's basically Tom Cruise versus Skynet, or Eagle Eye, or Val from Star Trek. From HAL 9000 to Vicky from iRobot, we've seen the evil supercomputer a million times. Moreover, an ethereal threat that is everywhere and nowhere at the same time must be handled in a very delicate way, otherwise it can become boring very quickly. Peter Jackson faced this problem with Sauron in the Lord of the Rings films. He solved this problem, however, by not only giving Sauron's servants clear motivations, but by making them a very real physical threat to all of our heroes. So who does Tom Cruise duke it out with? A wild-eyed murderous psychopath? Or perhaps a physically imposing, vengeful foe, driven by rage and hatred? Not exactly. What we end up with is a villain with motivations that aren't clearly defined, most likely because they're saving his backstory for part 2, whose perfectly manicured scruffy beard and brown suede jacket make him sort of look like a stylish dad, or one of those models in a flannel shirt they're trying to convince you is a hard-working American that buys our brand of truck, when the guy probably really drives a Prius. I will say, however, his wacky little henchwench, played by Klementieff, who most of you will recognize as Mantis from Guardians of the Galaxy, was one of my favorite characters in the movie, and I couldn't help but think she'd make a great Harley Quinn. Now, I hope it didn't seem like I was ragging on this movie too hard, because I really did enjoy it. It has a lot of fun, action, and excitement, and a few moments of really good humor that I wasn't expecting. It's a good old-fashioned, fast-paced summer blockbuster, and I found it refreshing to say the least. So overall, I really liked it, despite the fact that the villain's a stupid computer. But speaking of stupid computers, you may have noticed that last weekend, I didn't have a video. That's because my computer gave me the dreaded blue screen of death. But as Miracle Max might say, Fortunately, it was only mostly dead. I was able to coax it back to life, but I really don't know how much longer this computer is going to keep working for me. It keeps shutting down unexpectedly during menial tasks like typing up a script in a WordPad. Due to these random shutdowns, I've even lost very important files I was working on. If you've enjoyed our content, please consider donating to our PayPal so we can buy a new computer and continue to bring you weekly videos. Your support is greatly needed and appreciated. This week's video is brought to you by the generosity of Battalion Commander Matthew Nicholson. The Empire thanks you for your generous service, my friend. Until next time, may the Force be with you all.